The opposite of depression is showing up and embracing the bad stuff too, and leaning fully in and having some of it be really tough, but feeling like you're in it and you're not going to turn away from it, and that you're fully alive, and that you're going to use the tools that you can use in order to get through it.
You're listening to the Mindful Mama podcast, episode number 279. Today, we're talking about how to detox your thoughts with Dr. Andrea Bonior. Welcome to the Mindful Mama podcast, now with over 1 million downloads. Here, it's about becoming a less irritable, more joyful parent. At Mindful Mama, we know that you cannot give what you do not have. And when you've calm and peace within, then you can give it to your children. I'm your host, Hunter Clarke-FIELDS, Mindful Mama Mentor. I help smart, thoughtful parents stay calm so they can have strong, connected relationships with their children. I've been practicing mindfulness for over 20 years. I'm the creator of Mindful Parenting, and I'm the author of Raising Good Humans, a mindful guide to breaking the cycle of reactive parenting and raising kind, confident kids. Hey, welcome back to the Mindful Mama podcast. I am so glad you're here. It's spring. Spring is happening, is warm. I've been doing some yoga out in my yard, and I hope that wherever you are, you're enjoying some outside time and some warm weather and some fun stuff. And so I'm so excited to talk to you about this topic today. I think it's so important. But before I tell you about it, I just want to give a little shout out to you if you're brand new. Hey, welcome. Glad to connect with you. Today, we're talking about how to detox your thoughts with Dr. Andrea Bonior, and she's a licensed clinical psychologist, a speaker, media commentator, and she's the author of Detox Your Thoughts. And she also serves on Georgetown University's faculty, also a mom, of course. And we're going to talk about how to take care of that negativity bias and those negative thoughts that we all have that arise. So in order to be happy, do we always have to think happy thoughts? Do we have to banish negative thoughts? And Andrea says that our unhappiness comes not from having negative thoughts, but from paying too much attention to them, thus giving them too much power. So I'm really excited about talking about this idea because it has mindfulness written all over it. We talk about how to approach negative thoughts. I want you to listen for some important takeaways. How we give our thoughts too much power in general. Most of our thoughts, right? We tend to identify with them. How we can lean into negative thoughts and feelings instead of blocking them. How to help your kids work through negative self-talk too. So this is a really important episode to listen all the way through to the end. And it's so timely because in the Mindful Parenting membership, I just added a brand new bonus for the Mindful Parenting members because we're always adding to the membership and improving it for everybody. And we just added a brand new audio, which is a 55-minute audio of mindful parenting affirmations, because we know that we have this negativity bias and our brains are primed towards that. And sometimes we start to uncover some difficult things. It may be uncomfortable before it starts to get comfortable down the line. So these mindful parenting affirmations are something that members will get right away. So we can start to just transform those negative thoughts right away, in your free time, when you're taking a walk, when you're folding laundry, when you're driving the car. So I'm so excited about it. There are 100 specially designed mindful parenting affirmations. So exciting. And this week in the Mindful Parenting membership, we're doing a skills practice session. So we have these 3 big communication skills because we know that mindfulness is not enough. It's not enough just to calm down. So we have these 3 big communication skills, and it's kind of like learning another language. So to learn another language, you need to practice it. And so once a month in the membership, we have a specific skills practice session. We're having that this week as this podcast comes out, when we're going to be practicing win-win problem solving in breakout groups. It's really, really powerful to get that practice. Members come, accountabilities come, buddies come, and we practice how to resolve problems based on needs rather than the old school ways, which do not create as much cooperation. So, if you're interested in mindful parenting, in taking the leap and joining the membership, if you are ready for that, you can join the waitlist at mindfulparentingcourse.com. And I'm always open. You can always DM me if you have some questions about it, want to learn more. And just a quick announcement before we dive in, we still have a few spots open for the 2021 Mindful Parenting Teacher Training. And this is so exciting. We are developing this whole crew of teachers who are teaching it in North Carolina, in Montana, in Texas, in California, in Australia, so many places. It's really, really exciting to see it spreading, and people are teaching it to all kinds of people, low income communities, upper income families, everyone in between, all kinds of people. So this is really exciting to see it spread. If you would like to be a part of that, it may be perfect for you if you're a therapist or a teacher or a parent coach and you want to get in on one of those last spots for the fall session, which gives you the summer to do the mindful parenting course on your own the first time, or in the membership, not on your own at all, actually. You can learn more and get all the details, including the prices, the schedule, everything is at mindfulparentingcourse.com/teach. That's mindfulparentingcourse.com/teach. Of course, you can find everything at mindfulmamamentor.com. Whew. All right. This is a powerful episode. Join me at the table now as we talk to Dr. Andrea Bonior. Andrea, thank you so much for coming on the Mindful Mama podcast.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
I'm really enjoying your book,
Mhm.
Detox from Your Thoughts. It started as a challenge on BuzzFeed. And, I'm all about this. This is something I'm super passionate about. Like, like we have this negativity bias, we have these challenges with our thoughts, but maybe you could kind of tell me, like, in your own words, like what is the problem with our thoughts that we're having?
Yeah, sure. So we have such a strange relationship with our thoughts. I think even Americans in particular, we think that we have to have happy thoughts, that our thoughts have so much power. If we think positively, we can make all these things happen. And the truth is, I think that often backfires because what we're really learning is that our thoughts don't have to define us. That thoughts themselves can be arbitrary, they can be weird, they can be random. And it's often when we give our thoughts too much power by paying so much attention to them and thinking that they mean something important, that's when we get stuck into some negative ruts. And I think people are often surprised to learn that negative thoughts on their own, those aren't what cause depression or anxiety or bad habits. It's when negative thoughts become sticky that they start to cause depression or anxiety or bad habits. And I think it's that stickiness that often a lot of people get sucked into because they're fighting with their thoughts all the time, or they think that if they have a certain thought it means something horrible. And so, my goal in starting some of this work was really to bring some of the science of thoughts to mainstream populations who might not realize just how wrong we tend to think about thoughts.
Yeah, and as a student of mindfulness for many, many years, like, I can attest to this, and the freedom that comes from the other side of, like, not believing all your thoughts is so enormous. For me, when I after I started my meditation practice, I used to kind of fall into, like, I was 27 years old when I started. And up until that time, my whole life, I would, like, fall into these little pits of, like, depression or not feeling like I could handle the world. I mean, just kind of like a highly sensitive person, right? Like, I don't know. And then I started my meditation practice, and, like, those pits went away. Like, they literally went away for me. And it was such a huge game changer. And I really think it's was just because I probably, how that works, like, with meditation, I know they're still researching it and stuff, but, like, I really think it was because I just wasn't, like, spiraling down because of those negative thoughts. I was just like, oh, I was interrupting them more or something. Would you think that might be possible?
Yes, yes. And I think that experience is so remarkable, but I hear that a lot because I think the key is to become and mindfulness is really good at teaching this, is it's to become a gentle observer of your thoughts and experience, and to be non-judgmental, to be curious about your thoughts rather than ashamed or fearful of them. And I think for so many people, their mind feels like their own worst enemy. It feels like this dark, mysterious place that you can't control and that sometimes betrays you. And I think when people learn to adopt some practices of mindfulness, they become a lot better at recognizing that my thoughts can't automatically hurt me, that I can be aware of them and I can be curious about them, and I can use them to give me some insight, and other times I can observe them and say this thought isn't particularly helpful and I'm going to watch it pass. I don't have to scream at it. And I don't have to feel like I'm a prisoner in my own head. And I think, we are getting more anxious as a society. And certainly we've had an incredibly difficult year in so many ways. And I think for a lot of people, they do fall into the trap of feeling like they have to be positive, that they have to be happy, that if they have negative thoughts, then that means they're not being strong enough. And in reality, the opposite is true. Sometimes when we can lean into the difficult thoughts and feelings, they actually don't gain as much power, and we're able to let them pass, and we're able to feel more in control of them.
There's so much there I want to talk to you about, but so I love this idea that like we don't have to be positive, like because we tend to like
Mhm.
be so hard on ourselves if we are not positive, and that we can lean into those thoughts. But you also talked about like the that some of our bad habits and depression cause are happen because our thoughts are sticky too. So like I want to hear about both of those, but maybe we can start with sticky first. Like tell me what you mean by sticky.
Sure. By sticky, I mean they keep coming back and they stay. They have this weight. So they're there all the time and we're listening to them all the time. And they feel like we can't step outside of them. They feel like they're part of us. So, really, this is sort of something that we call thought action fusion, or just cognitive fusion. This notion that our thoughts are, equivalent to their actions, or we're fused with our thoughts. Our thoughts define us. And people with obsessive compulsive disorder really struggle with this because they have these intrusive repetitive thoughts and they feel like these thoughts are so meaningfully bad. They do anything to get rid of the thought, right? It's like this itch that keeps coming back and I've got to scratch it and scratch it and scratch it to make it go away. Whereas in reality, what we're learning is that the answer is something called cognitive diffusion. To defuse from your thoughts means to be able to detach yourself from them and to actually observe them and label them and recognize them, but not have to scratch that itch so hard because it's not as threatening, right? I mean, the person with obsessive compulsive disorder is in so much distress because they hate those thoughts so much, and they're terrified that those thoughts will make them do something or have their compulsion. Whereas somebody that is free from that has really taken the tack that the thoughts alone can't hurt them. So when we get that cognitive diffusion going and we're able to separate from those thoughts and just be an observer in a mindful way, that's when they become less sticky because we're literally unsticking them from our own sense of self.
And it's like that whole like what we resist persists saying. And I love that you have attributed to
Exactly.
Carl Jung because I was like, I don't know who said that first. But that idea that like it's like, if you're trying to push a beach ball down under the water, like it's gonna pop up
Yes.
somewhere, or like, try not to think of a purple elephant with white polka
Mhm.
dots. Like, don't think about it. Don't think about it. Good luck with that. I love that that actually has a name, ironic processing theory. That's fun.
Yes. Isn't that a goofy name? But it's really true, right? It's our brain is not gonna respond well to us trying to harness it in this way. Or like you said, the beach ball. I think so many people are afraid of their thoughts or
Yeah.
even their feelings for that matter because they
Mhm.
think, "Oh, if I actually observe this thought or acknowledge it, it means that it's true or that I think it or that I'm being a
Mhm.
negative person or it's gonna make my mood go sour." And in
Mhm.
reality, it's like, no, it's precisely the opposite. When I'm able to observe my thoughts and label them, they pass. They're not like the beach ball being forced to be underneath the water because the beach ball gets to float away and I'm not holding it anymore.
Oh, way to take that metaphor and run with it. I love that.
I love
Thank
a
you,
good
Andrea.
metaphor.
And so that ties back to what you said about we don't have to be positive and we can actually lean into it. So what you're describing is like an acceptance. And sometimes like when I'm talking about mindfulness and kind of this idea of sort of some of the clarity and the freedom and a little bit of that space for observation that we get, I say how, it's not like you don't get all those like, it's not like you don't feel uh, fear, anxiety, have weird ass crazy thoughts coming through your head.
Mhm.
It's just that you don't, yeah, it's like you're not fused to them. Like you're like, oh, isn't that interesting? Look at that. Isn't the mind a crazy thing? So tell me more about kind of leaning into it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so true. I think so many people think if I let myself feel negative thoughts, then I'm going to feel negatively forever. Or, we teach our kids this very early. Think happy thoughts, turn that frown upside down, right? The smiley face is the ultimate in praise. And in reality, it is true that if we actually can lean into the negative thoughts and lean into the negative feelings, we're going to cope better because there are a couple reasons for that. So the first part of leaning in is really about finding the tools to manage it. If you always run from sadness, or if you always push it down, or you never acknowledge it, then that denies you the opportunity to learn what helps you feel it and let it pass, right? If you learn to label it and talk about it, or reach out to a friend, or to acknowledge that you're sad, or acknowledge that you're going through a period of loss, then you're able to find meaning in that feeling and you're able to actually get new strategies. Okay, I know when I feel sad and lonely, I like to connect with this friend. Or maybe sometimes when I feel sad, I feel like I don't have, much interesting going on in my life. So I will do something creative, or, maybe this type of music helps put me in a better mood. You're actually learning the skills to be able to manage the feeling. Whereas when we don't lean into it, we tend to deny ourselves that opportunity, and we teach ourselves that those feelings are unacceptable, right? And so then when they do come, because we have had a loss, then what are we going to do? The only thing we know how to do at that point is to run from them, or to try to numb them, or escape from them. And I think we do this to our kids sometimes. We teach them that, the best way to feel is happy, and therefore, I think what we don't realize is that we're actually denying them the opportunity to get a toolbox of things to use when they are sad, because sadness will come. And sadness is just as valid a part of life as happiness. And I think it's hard for us to recognize that, but it's like when
Mhm.
I work with somebody who's gotten sober after substance abuse, for instance, I think the average person might assume that it's about, finding ways to be happy, 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 and find a happy life even without your substance of choice. And in reality, if you work with folks like this, they'll tell you that it's not about that. It's about actually leaning into feeling things more fully. And no, they're not
Mhm.
happy all the time, but they feel like they're living. And living means embracing the tough parts too, and being fully alive for them. The opposite of depression is not a big fat smiley emoji. The opposite of depression is showing up and embracing the bad stuff too, and leaning fully in, and having some of it be really tough, but feeling like you're in it and you're not going to turn away from it, and that you're fully alive, and that you're going to use the tools that you can use in order to get through it, but you're not going to try to numb yourself or detach yourself from it. And that's hard. I mean, I think we want to make our kids comfortable, we want to make ourselves comfortable. So a lot of times it's easier to say, "Oh, it's not appropriate for me to be feeling sad right now. I'm at work, let me just stuff it." But it does have a way of haunting us later on if we're constantly stuffing negative emotion. It really does have a way to haunt us.
Stay tuned for more Mindful Mama podcast right after this break. We are proud to be sponsored by SESH. That's SESH. Have you heard about this? This is such a great service. These are therapist led support groups. So we know that traditional therapy can be expensive, and to many of us, it's inaccessible. Hundreds of dollars a month to text with a counselor, no thanks. SESH offers a safe space for group support where you can connect with other people in similar situations, all led by expert therapists. SESH is the leading mental health app for accessible group support, facilitated by diverse, licensed therapists who are experts in their field. SESH is recommended by top psychologists, therapists, and mental health experts, and it offers this really cost-effective way to meet your mental health goals. Even Oprah Magazine named SESH as a top virtual mental health resource. It was the most affordable option on the list. This is how it works. SESH makes it easy to find your community, and there are sessions for people of all kinds of different backgrounds, all kinds of different topics and issues like body image, living with anxiety and depression, building healthy habits, managing stress, self esteem, postpartum, all kinds of things, so much more. So each session is a 60-minute online group support session led by an experienced therapist with a specific specialty. And each session has a maximum of 14 participants. It also offers community specific support for Black, Latinx, LGBTQIA, and the AAPI community, and more. Sesh is only $60 a month for unlimited group sessions with a licensed therapist. It's recommended by top psychologists and therapists, and each new user receives a free 2-week trial. You have nothing to lose and so much to gain. Take the first step. Go to seshtherapy.com or download the Sesh app today in the App Store. Again, that's Sesh Therapy, SESH, Sesh, seshtherapy.com, and it's mental health care made easy. And we thank them for sponsoring the podcast. I love this idea that the opposite of depression is being fully alive. And I can imagine the listener hearing that from you, Andrea, and thinking like, oh, what do they want me to be like? Have this like be this like roller coaster of like chaotic emotional expression. And I don't think that's what you're talking about. I think, and I'll let you jump in here and correct me, but like I mean, for me anyway, like the idea of like when I can fully feel all the feelings, I actually have more equanimity because I'm I'm feeling it and then I'm letting it pass, and I'm feeling it, but I don't have to react so much in some ways. Like I can feel all the sensations in the body, and yeah, and I have a good cry, and then there's a new moment. But tell me what your response to that idea is.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I think people are afraid of letting themselves feel.
Mhm.
And certainly with depression, I mean, not to minimize it all, there's a whole host of treatments that really need to be employed, potentially when somebody is depressed. And we should look at the whole picture that, there might be some medical concerns, there might be some nutritional concerns, there might be abusive relationships, there might be all kinds of things, there might be all kinds of tools that we need to treat it. But I think in general, people are really afraid of feeling their emotions, and people who feel lonely and detached and sort of aimless, a lot of times they're scared of letting themselves fully embrace emotions because they feel like, oh well, if I start to cry I'll never stop, or
Mhm.
if I let myself be on this full ride of emotions, I'm going to be on a roller coaster, as you said. And the truth is that the more that we avoid the negative emotions, that's when they become so scary. That's when we become so ill equipped to manage them. And so it's not going to be a roller coaster
Mhm.
if we've actually had some practice letting ourselves label them. And so that really means, using those cliched I statements sometimes, I feel upset that you said that, or I am feeling low today and I'm not really sure why. And even the labeling, I mean, there's research that says that it's just so powerful to even just give voice to our emotion. Some people keep journals or they do something artistic with it or they reach out to a friend. Ironically, those techniques really help the emotion pass more quickly than if we're fighting it all the time and pretending that we don't have it.
Yeah, I love that. Name it to tame it, right? Like as it's like accepting that this is here, And I love this. So in mindful parenting, we talk about a lot of tools to manage our feelings and also to diffuse from our thoughts. But you also talk about diffusing your thought from your thoughts here in Detox from Your Thoughts. So, what are some ways that people can get a little bit of separation from the thoughts that they feel like maybe are plaguing their mind?
Yeah, there are lots of fun techniques for this. And it starts with the basic sort of self distancing, what we call it, which is even the way that you hear your thought or think about your thought, instead of, oh, tonight's going to be a disaster, or oh, that was stupid that I said that, or oh, I bet she's mad that I didn't email her back. Label that as a thought first. I'm having the thought that tonight's going to be a disaster. I'm having the thought that she's mad at me. That's that first step. And it seems silly and small, but really it reminds your brain, wait a second. That thought is not actually necessarily my reality. And you can take this a step further by talking about it in the third person. And this is where people really get a kick out of it. They say, seriously. But I have some clients right now that are like, this is really working. So instead of, Andrea thinks that she's going to be a bozo on this interview, actually, that's what you want to say, right? Is Andrea thinks that, she's doing a bad job at parenting today. Or, Andrea's having the thought that she's a terrible mother. And it sounds so silly, but it does give us that one extra step of distance when we talk about it in the third person, because it reminds us to be an observer. And then you can get even funnier with, thinking about different ways to experience your thoughts. So if you have this, nagging thought, it keeps coming back, it keeps coming back. I can't believe I did that. Why did I accidentally write that in an email to my boss? You can turn that thought into something with, a funny voice. Some of my clients have characters, right? And we're kind of afraid of doing this at times, like, oh, I don't want to have voices inside of my head. But, I have clients that have like the heckler in the mental audience, and they literally will take some of those negative thoughts that keep coming back and they'll turn them into the voice of the drunken guy at the comedy club who's just heckling and heckling. You're really stupid. I can't believe you said that. That's not a good performance at all. And they'll label it that and they'll hear it in that voice and it seems silly and yeah, it kind of makes them laugh, but that's not really the key. The key is also that you're recognizing that this is not an objective truth, that this is a lens that you can choose to look through, but it's no more valid or accurate than your average heckler, right? It doesn't make much sense. Or maybe more general worries you can even see more visually. I have clients that talk about their worry blob. Like, okay, I can see the worry blob coming and it's dark and it's gray. And maybe figuring out where you feel it in your body can really up the mindfulness too. Okay, the worry blob, it's settling into my chest and it feels like a weight and I can feel my heart getting heavier with this worry blob. And when you know exactly how you feel it in your body, then you can take really good steps to counteract that in the moment. Okay, let me do some breathing. Let me do some neck rolls that reduce my tension. Let me take, some visualization moments to actually help this worry blob disappear and I can watch it try to disappear in my head. People turn thoughts into songs. They write them down in a different language. I mean, there's no limit to the types of techniques and the book talks about a lot of them because once people find what works for them, it really is remarkable to see them develop the habit and then put it into practice regularly.
Now, do you see well, there's a few things there. I've been chided at certain times for talking about myself in the third person at a dinner party with a certain friends. I'll be like, Hunter, blah, 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 blah. And they've just like laughed at me. But I wanted to point out to you that I think this is so interesting. Like in from the Buddhist sense, like it actually makes a lot more sense to talk about ourselves in the third person because our true self is not our body, it's not our mind, right? We are more like, we are the observer, right? Like we are the consciousness and the
Mhm.
observer rather than, our body is constantly changing. There's nothing that's, you know, Well, everything is constantly changing,
Mhm.
including our consciousness as well. But it's sort of interesting. So the third person is more accurate, like in like the way in some cultures people say instead of I'm Hunter, they might say they call me Hunter, right? Like, which I think is
Mhm.
really interesting, right? Anyway, I just love that. But also, I wonder, like, and I love how it reminds us to be the observer, even though it may sound a little wacky. Uh,
Yes,
but this,
maybe dinner parties are not the totally ideal time to practice these techniques out loud.
I know, I've got a totally strange side to me, I'm sure. That everyone who knows me well would agree to that. Uh, but I'm wondering that the steps to like take care of the worry blob, like if you were talking about, like, say someone has a worry blob, and then they're like, oh, I can feel it in my chest, blah blah blah. That sometimes those steps that people do to kind of like that can that can be like a subtle kind of resistance that makes it like hang on even more, like, oh, these deep breaths I'm taking, they're supposed to get rid of this thing, right? So they're not
Yes.
accepting it. Can you talk a little bit to that? Because I see that in the people I work with in mindful parenting.
Sure, sure. Yeah. And with acceptance and commitment therapy, we're really seeing that it really works best when the sole goal is not, okay, make the thoughts go away. These
Yeah.
techniques are going to eradicate the thoughts. That's kind of missing the point. The point is actually to make the thoughts less powerful. And so I think leaning into that is really important because if people think they're going to do 2 rounds of diaphragmatic breathing and then their worries are gone forever, that's gonna be a disappointment, whereas they're gonna notice instead with the breath, do I feel a little more engaged in the moment right now and more open to the experience even of having these worries? They don't seem so scary.
Mm,
Or maybe they're gonna disappear a little bit more quickly, but I'm not gonna count on that as the sole goal here, because the goal is actually for me to be able to coexist with these worries and feel empowered to move through them. And the happy side effect is that in time, the worries will come less often because
mhm.
they don't really have a purpose anymore. You're not going to notice them as much when they're not as bothersome. It's like they just become something that doesn't really click with you. And so you don't attune to it. But I think that when people, go that my worries are going to, completely disappear, then you have to think about how rigid that is as a thought and how that goes completely against the idea of being open to these more difficult emotions.
Stay tuned for more Mindful Mama podcast right after this break. Thank you to Cubo AI for sponsoring the Mindful Mama podcast. Cubo AI is this amazing baby monitor. It's the result of an IVF mom who couldn't sleep wondering if her baby was breathing. And all that was made worse when she found her infant son with a bib over his face in the crib. And it dawned on her that there was nothing out there to help. So, what if she was asleep and something happened? So she teamed up with her pediatrician, Dr. Ye, and this team of tech parents to make a change. And years later, the Cubo AI Smart Baby Monitor is actually saving babies' lives. So I'm going to tell you about the features, but this is so cool. So one of them is that it detects things over the baby's face. Well, you might think like, oh, I'm not putting my things in my crib with my baby, but there was Kristen, this Cubo AI mom, and she had put her baby in a swaddler at night. I put my babies in swaddlers all night, and the baby had managed to wriggle free of the swaddle enough to pull it over the baby's head completely and disappear. And what's amazing is that the Cubo AI alerts you if there's a covered face. There's a notification sent to you when your baby's face is covered or if the baby rolls over. And this can be turned off, of course, when you don't need it. But wow, I mean, it's actually saving lives, which is so cool. So, this baby monitor applies AI detection to baby sleep, safety, and memories. It can do those covered face alerts, crying alerts. You can adjust the sensitivity of sound. It has this really high quality camera, and you can set up a danger zone alert, which is so cool. So you set this danger zone, whether it's the crib railing or the door to the backyard or the area near the staircase, whatever. And Cubo AI will send an alert when the baby crosses the threshold. And we tested this out in Team Mindful Mama podcast, and our intrepid assistant, Emma, has toddlers and babies, and she really loved the danger zone setting. It alerts her phone when the toddler makes a break for the bedroom door, which she has recently learned how to open. So she loves it. And she said, hands down, the picture is the best quality. And she loves the great features like temperature, humidity, comfort settings, and the stand that allows the Cubo AI little bird to have an unobstructed view of the baby right in the crib, and it's all adjustable. The HD video is so crisp that you'll be able to see your baby's tummy moving and even the pattern on their onesie day or night. And that night vision thing has a blue light, not a red one. So, it's not going to disturb their sleep with that light. Go to getcubo.com and use my code HUNTER for $10 off your purchase. That's getcubo.com, GETCUBO.com, and use my code HUNTER, and you get $10 off your purchase of the Cubo AI Smart Baby Monitor. It is an amazing gift for anyone who's expecting, or if you got babies and toddlers that you need to keep an eye on. You can rest your mind. That's getcubo.com, coupon code HUNTER, and you can find that link right in the show notes wherever you're listening to this. All right. Thank you. I appreciate you clarifying that, Andrea, because yeah, I think that that can be like this like little subtle kind of like wheel spinning that we get into. So you talk in your book about recognizing and counteracting your blind spots. How do we even start to see our blind spots as far as our thinking?
Yeah, yeah, there's so many. And of course, therapy helps with this.
Hmm.
The most common blind spots you can start to recognize by even looking at the way that you think, so certainly some of the thought observance that we've already been talking about, noticing what thoughts come up, labeling them as thoughts and looking for patterns. Also the way that we speak and the way that, we might even communicate with other people via text or whatever. Maybe all or none thinking, for instance, starts to be pretty clear. You start to notice, a lot of the times when I'm texting my friends, I'm saying, oh, this job is the worst, or, it's never going to get better with my kids in the arguing, or, I'm using these never or the worst or these kind of extreme
Always. My
all or
kids are always X.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's so easy to fall into that. But then you notice, like, wait a second, language matters. And that the way that we talk, it doesn't just reflect how we think, but it actually affects how we think. And that maybe if we're constantly using all or none language, for instance, it really does make us less able to see the world in a way that makes us happy, or to be grateful for what we do have, or to calm ourselves down when we can, because those type of blind spots often they've gotten ingrained over periods of years and years and years. All or none thinking is so much like that. People tend to start thinking that way maybe even as a teenager. So when we can recognize those types of blind spots, we can start to counteract them in the moment, and then we build that muscle of putting on that alternative lens in the moment, and after a while it becomes more natural.
All right. So just paying attention, right? That observance,
Mhm.
paying attention, and then interrupting. So it's so like very mindfulness based. I love that. I love that. So you talk about the idea that sometimes people chase pleasure and miss out on meaning. And you talk about, you have some wonderful questions in that chapter, but that I would love to kind of pull forward about uh, about how to kind of like find sort of more meaning. So maybe you could just tell us a little bit about this idea of like chasing pleasure and missing out on meaning. What do you mean by that?
Sure. Yeah, I think a lot of us view happiness as pure pleasure, simple joys all the time. And that misses some of the depth of what true fulfillment, true happiness often is. And I think the people that really have the most fulfilled lives, if you look at the research, there's a different kind of happiness there. It's not, purely pleasurable, right? Instead, it's about depth. It's about having a sense of purpose. purpose. It's about believing that even difficult times are part of the bigger picture. It's about growth. It's about having values that you're true to and that help guide you when times are tough, and having a sense of purpose that can make you feel that even the challenges are worth it. And that's really that depth of happiness. I think so many of us have seen people flame out and burn out. The classic celebrity story. They get everything they've ever dreamed of and they get so rich and they're at the top of their game. And yet things start to feel empty because there's no real sense of purpose anymore or a real sense of meaning. And so I think a lot of times this pursuit of happiness that we go on as Americans or that we teach our kids to go on is really looking for external senses of validation or achievement and that type of happiness, quote unquote. But that doesn't leave room for the fact that life does get really difficult. This past year, who would have thought, right? And it's a perfect example. People have been miserable this past year in a lot of ways, and we've had really hard times. But I don't think that has to mean that it's purely been unhappy, because I think people who can derive a sense of meaning from this challenging time actually can see that, that's part of a deeper fulfillment is learning something and growing from difficult times. So I think, pleasures are great, and I'm not saying let's not seek joy, because seeking joy, it makes life very sweet. But I think we need something a little bit more than that. And if we chase pleasure at the expense of the deeper stuff, that's when we really see some emptiness.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that's so true. And it's kind of like talking about a little bit, you're talking about a little bit between the difference between the kind of experiential mind and the storytelling mind, right? Like there's
Mhm.
some, you ask the question, how would you want your life to be summed up one day? And that's kind of tying into this idea that we tell, our thoughts, we tell stories, our mind is this meaning making machine, and it's telling stories about our life, and those stories can give a lot of satisfaction, right, and meaning and depth,
Mhm.
versus that just pure experiential moment of biting into the Oreo or whatever it is, right? Um,
Yes. Yes, and we have a complicated relationship right now with storytelling, I think, too, because so many of us are telling stories for other people, right? We're making
mm,
sure that our Instagram feeds are perfectly curated to look good to everyone else. And yet we're actually missing out on what is this really supposed to be saying to me, right? Like, what am I supposed to actually be feeling and experiencing here? The whole sort of calculating a story as a narrator for someone else's benefit is really complicated. I think we do that a lot. It's like, okay, well, I looked good in this photo, or my kid achieved this, or I'm proud of this. And I think if you get too much into that, you start to feel kind of like you're on this treadmill of constantly trying to go somewhere and achieve something and prove something. And the actual experience of being on the treadmill is pretty lonesome.
mm, yes, that's so true. I mean, that's like our kind of social species, right? Like us being in a group where status and things like that matters kind of gone awry, and like that
Mhm.
that telling a story for others. So thinking, we talked a little bit about, we talked about negative self-talk and how we can diffuse from negative self-talk and some tools we can use to deal with that ourselves. What do you recommend maybe a parent may do or say if we hear like our child using negative self-talk? Like I know that my daughter, for a simple example, is like, I can't do that, and I always say, yet. I'm trying to like, I want to be that, I want to be that positive voice in her that comes up
Yes.
in her head later, right? So what are some things we can do as parents to help our kids diffuse from their thoughts and deal with that negativity in their own, that's just natural for us.
Yeah, for sure. I think we want to swoop in and just say the opposite. Oh, you can do this. Oh, you're great at that. And yet we're learning, with kids, mental health challenges are really increasing even pre-pandemic. So something's not going right, when we try to swoop in that way. And I think the important part is to really cultivate an understanding that thoughts don't define you and that thoughts are okay, but they're not necessarily true. Any thought is not necessarily you. Any thought is not necessarily true either, of course. And so, you know, when your child is showing those thoughts of being, unable to do something or not good at something, part of it is having them use those same tools of recognizing it as a thought. So even, you're having that thought and, that thought might be coming from anxiety. Are you looking through a lens that makes sense right now? Some kids respond well to sort of the metaphor of glasses. Like, am I looking through clear glasses right now? Or did I put on a pair of glasses that is not the prescription that I need to see clearly? And these glasses are scratched or they're distorted or they're super, super dark. So I can't see anything at all, right? What kind of lenses am I putting on and looking through? Or if I have the same thoughts over and over again that are very distressing, kids respond really well to that idea of a character too. I've got my stage fright bully that often starts to yell at me when I'm about to speak up in class, but that stage fright bully really doesn't know me very well and doesn't have any important information to give me. So I know that it's going to be yelling, but I'm going to just keep on going and the show must go on and that kind of thing. But I think we do often swoop in with our kids in a way that has, sort of the backfire effect of invalidating their experience. Oh, don't cry, or you have nothing to be afraid of, or, it's going to be okay. Oh, you're okay. And it's so tempting to do that because we think it's comforting. But in reality, the biggest comfort is actually helping teach them that, yeah, this is hard. You are feeling big feelings, and let's work on giving you tools to move through them, or let me sit with you here in this feeling. I mean, one of the reasons therapy is so powerful is because you're having someone bear witness. You're having someone there with you in your pain, not because that person's taking away that pain in that moment immediately, but they're experiencing it with you and they're there and they're not running away. And so a lot of times I think our job as a parent is, instead of, making their feelings go away, it's helping them understand that we get it and that the feelings are big. And now let's move forward and figure out how to act on them. I think a lot of times we want to take our kids' feelings away because it's like, well, if my kid gets mad, they're going to scream or they're going to throw stuff and they're going to behave in a way we don't want them to. But that pause is really important. It's not the anger that's the problem. We don't need our kids to not be angry. We need our kids to not go on autopilot when they're angry and start screaming or start hitting their sister. That's what we need. So we need to teach that pause. And that's very different than teaching them not to be angry.
Stay tuned for more Mindful Mama podcast right after this break. We are supported by Mission Farms CBD. Their mission at Mission Farms CBD is to create products that help you feel good again. Take their icy hot Relieve CBD joint and muscle gel, for instance. It blocks pain in joints and muscles, taking you from the sidelines back in the game. Mission Farms is a small company. They are a 4-acre team of 4 out in Oregon, a small town where they grow everything right there and make all their products right there. Mission Farms uses organically farmed hemp to create the CBD products, infuses them with organic essential oils. Even their CBD soaps are made with minimal ingredients, all of which you can pronounce. Their products are handcrafted on the farm, and the goal is to help you by easing discomfort, deepening your sleep, calming your stress, and boosting your overall well-being. Mission Farms has all natural CBD oils. They have a special calm oil to calm your stress and a special rest oil to deepen your sleep. They also have the joint and muscle gel, CBD goat milk creams from the goats that are on the 4-acre farm, CBD mints, CBD roll-on, CBD for pets, CBD goat milk soap, and CBD bath soaks. Mission Farms really wants you to feel good again, all naturally. So we are passing along a special deal of 25% off your first order, which is awesome. So you can head over to missionfarmscbd.com. That's hunters.farmscbd.com and use the code HUNTER at checkout for 25% off your first order. That's a great deal for this all natural high end product. So that link is right in the show notes wherever you're listening to this. You can look at where you're listening to this and see some notes. You'll find that link. missionfarmcbd.com, 25% off your first order with the coupon code HUNTER. I love it. I love it. Everything you're saying, Andrea, is like really beautiful. Now I'm
Thank you.
curious, you help all these, you help your clients and things like that, but the work that you've done with this, with the, diffusing from your thoughts and things like that, how has that helped you personally in your own life?
Yeah. Well, I certainly have to own up to all of my hypocritical moments, right? I think so many of us, are out there trying to do the work and help others, and we're learning the tools and we're reading the research and we have a clinical practice. And then it's like, oh, that all goes out the window sometimes at 10:45 at night when I've just, I've had such a long day and everybody's cooped up in the house for almost an entire year. So I think I try to use these techniques and I believe in them so passionately and I see them work when I put them into practice too. But I also recognize this is real life, and and my kids love being able to be like, "Mom, that's all or none thinking," or I mean literally my daughter will say that to me sometimes or or well, you're a therapist, so you should be a little more patient with me. What would you tell your client? And it's like, we're all human beings. But I think, maybe it's just an excuse, but it really is part of that larger picture that it is ultimately about giving yourself some grace too, right? Like these techniques work beautifully and I can employ them most of the time. And I think I'm pretty decent at managing my emotional health, but not 100% of the time. And honestly, maybe that gives me a little more empathy for the battle that everybody's facing because I know that if I have the tools at my disposal and that I teach these tools and I can't always put them into practice, then I need to have even more compassion for people who are learning these tools for the first time and might not totally be buying into them yet.
Mm. Yes, yes. So true. All of those things you said. Yes. My daughter sometimes says to me like, "Oh, mom, you have to read your own book."
Yes, and my husband has occasionally been known to say, "Well, I think you should detox that thought. I think you should get," and it's like, "Okay, okay, touche."
And so you just kind of referred to this, but I really love how you bring in the idea of ahimsa into your
Uh-huh.
book. And ahimsa is one of the 5 precepts in yoga, but I'll let you explain it. Can you tell us a little more about it?
Sure, sure. And I love this. And I credit my own therapist for having brought this into my life when I was in therapy during a difficult time. And she also has a yoga background, in addition to being a clinical psychologist. So it was very much sort of a nice, almost spiritual addition to the way that I thought about some of these cognitive techniques. So the concept of ahimsa is this concept that we're all connected and that when we hurt another human being, we hurt ourselves too. And the way my therapist had used it for me was going the other direction because I was being particularly hard on myself during this period of my life and was blaming myself for things that I just couldn't stop blaming myself for, despite needing to let go of that. And I think that, turning it that way, realizing that every time I was unkind to myself or that I was really aggressively violent with blaming myself when I would have never done that to someone else, I was in a way putting unkindness back into the universe too. Because if we all are connected, it really does go both ways. And I think so many moms in particular, they're really good with the compassion towards everyone else, but they really struggle with turning the compassion inward and having some grace for themselves. And I think, that's a classic problem. And I think this concept of ahimsa helps drive home the fact that you're not doing anyone any good by beating yourself up. And that in reality, when you're beating yourself up, there's going to be a ripple effect somehow. If you're being so negative to yourself, your kids are going to maybe pick up on that, or there's going to be a negative tone in the house, or you're not going to be as productive in the work you do in helping other people, or whatever it might be. We all are really connected. And And I love that because I think it's a way of thinking more profoundly about the way that some of these cognitive techniques can actually help society as large.
Hmm. That's so beautiful. Amen to that. I love
Mhm.
that.
Thank you.
Um, Andrea, it's been a real pleasure to talk to you. I love your book, and your writing style is really fun. So don't be afraid to buy the book. It's Detox from Your Thoughts. Where can people find out more about you and the work that you're doing?
Thank you so much for that, by the way. So my website, drandreabonior.com or even detoxyourthoughts.com, it goes to the same place. That would be a good place to start. I am on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter, despite myself. Sometimes I think I need to detox from those. Um, and the book's available wherever books are sold.
Great. Well, thank you so much for the work that you do in the world, and for putting this all out in such a really accessible way, and sharing it with us in this way. It's really really beautiful, and has, I'm sure, will have ahimsa ripple effects all around, and I really appreciate you sharing your time with us today.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you not only for having me, but for all of the beautiful work that you're doing as well.
What a powerful episode. I hope this is going to empower you to take a more active role in taking care of your thoughts, understanding your thoughts, being proactive about the info that your brain is serving you up, how to deal with that mindfully. So you can do it. We can start to shift and change things. The only thing that's constant is that we are constantly changing. That is the only truth. So, all those stories you have told yourself in the past are old. They're gone. They're simply old stories, and you can decide how you want to show up. You can decide the story that you want to write about your life. I was thinking about this. We kind of look back at the story of our lives, right? Say, oh, it was like this, it was like that. We explain and analyze and understand it. But how much more powerful would it be to think ahead to 20 years from now, 15 years from now, when your kids are a lot older? What's the story they're going to tell about their childhood? What is the story that you are currently writing about your family? And is that the story you want to be telling about your family? Is that the story you want to be telling about your family? These can be so powerful, and they can change. All it takes is a decision. All it takes is a decision to change it. And then we can start that process of change. We can listen to our higher selves. We can stop listening to the voices of doubt and fear and what if, and take a leap and do the things that really matter to us, and invest our time, our energy, and our attention into what is really important to us. So for me, that is my family. That is this life. That is changing things for not just my family, but for everybody. That's what this whole mindful parenting movement is all about. Like, I want, it's great to go help kids in schools. It's wonderful to help kids in schools. But you know what? When a kid gets to school, they're probably 5 years old, 4 years old. Like, a lot has happened then. If we can start to change families, wow, that's when we are really, really shifting the bedrock of our culture. If we can start to change those families, it's really, really powerful. So that's what we're doing in mindful parenting. So if you want to be part of it, of course, learn more, get on the wait list, go to mindfulparentingcourse.com. If you feel like you want to teach it, you got the experience, maybe you're a parent coach, a therapist, or a teacher, you want to really, really master it, you want to teach others, you want to share it with your community, then maybe check out those last few spots I have for the fall 2021 teacher training. And we're enrolling now. Enrollment ends June 31st, 2021. So check those out at mindfulparentingcourse.com/teach. And I would love to welcome you into the crew here of people who are working to make this change for families all around the world. Oh, so exciting. So, hey, I hope this episode has been helpful for you. I hope it's been powerful. I want to hear what your takeaways are. You can take a screenshot of you listening to this right now and Share it with me. Tag me on Instagram at Mindful Mama Mentor and share your takeaways. You sharing and you leaving reviews and stuff, that's like the best way to make this change. It's awesome that you're here, that you're listening, that you're engaged, that you're here all the way at the end, that you're part of this movement. I appreciate that. I appreciate this time that we've had together. And I hope you appreciate this episode, and I hope it makes some shifts in your life, whether it's like just a little teeny shift or if it's a big shift. Either way, I'd love to know. I'd love for you to let me know. My friends, I will be back in your ears next week, of course. And next week's episode is about power of gratefulness. And oh man, if you listen, you're going to hear me like crying, because I'm crying during the episode. It's like so powerful and cathartic and amazing and intense, and I love it. So make sure you tune in, make sure you're subscribed and all that. And I will talk to you next week. I can't wait to connect then. Thank you so much for listening. Namaste.
I'd say definitely do it. It's really helpful. It will change your relationship with your kids for the better. It will help you communicate better. And just, I'd say communicate better as a person, as a wife, as a spouse. It's been really a positive influence in our lives. So definitely do it.
I'd say definitely do it. It's so worth it. The money really is inconsequential when you get so much benefit from being a better parent to your children and feeling like you're connecting more with them and not feeling like you're yelling all the time or you're like, why isn't things working? I would say definitely do it. It's so worth it. It'll change you.
No matter what age someone's child is, it's a great opportunity for personal growth, and it's a great investment in someone's family. I'm very thankful I had this.
You can continue in your old habits that aren't working, or you can learn some new tools and gain some perspective to shift everything in your parenting.
Are you frustrated by parenting? Do you listen to the experts and try all the tips and strategies, but you're just not seeing the results that you want? Or are you lost as to where to start? Does it all seem so overwhelming with too much to learn? Are you yearning for a community of people who get it, who also don't want to threaten and punish to create cooperation? Hi, I'm Hunter Clarke-Fields, and if you answered yes to any of these questions, I want you to seriously consider the Mindful Parenting membership. You'll be joining hundreds of members who have discovered the path of mindful parenting and now have confidence and clarity in their parenting. This isn't just another parenting class. This is an opportunity to really discover your unique, lasting relationship, not only with your children, but with yourself. It will translate into lasting, connected relationships, not only with your children, but your partner too. Let me change your life. Go to mindfulparentingcourse.com to add your name to the waitlist, so you will be the first to be notified when I open the membership for enrollment. I look forward to seeing you on the inside. mindfulparentingcourse.com.